We had the great wisdom of Cyndi Lauper, and I want to begin tonight by sharing the great wisdom of Ted Lasso. If you haven't watched this season, I apologize for the spoiler, but it's a small one. It turns out that one of the players on the team is gay, and he has been keeping it a secret until one of his teammates finds out. There's a whole series of events, including misunderstandings and drama and fistfights. It is a sitcom, after all. But when the player finally comes out to his team, they are all supportive, agreeing that they don't care. And then Ted, in all of his wonderful Tedness, gives a speech about how they really do care. It involves an unfortunate analogy to being a Denver Broncos fan, but in the end, he concludes, "We don't not care. We care very much. We care about who you are and what you must have been going through. But hey, from now on, you don't have to go through it all by yourself." It's a touching moment of empathy, solidarity, and allyship. Pride Month is a good time to consider these themes. How does this congregation ensure that our LGBTQ members feel a sense of belonging and welcome? And how do we as a community, LGBTQ and allies alike, work together to support and advocate for gay rights? Even though we live in a very blue state, one look at the news reminds us that members of the LGBTQ community face real danger, discrimination, and injustice across the globe and in our own country. Just this week, the president of Uganda signed a bill making gay sex punishable by life imprisonment, or even the death penalty in certain cases. And in this country, over 500 anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced in state legislatures so far this year. And 45 of those bills have already become law. They include laws targeting drag performances, laws rolling back protections for LGBTQ people, and laws censoring school curriculum, including books. And nearly half of the anti-LGBTQ bills introduced this year target transgender and non-binary people, particularly children. From restrictions on pronouns, on bathrooms, on sports teams, and most crucially on medical care, these bills basically aim to erase trans people, to deny their right to exist, or even to deny their existence at all. And make no mistake, these bills aren't just about scoring political points. These bills mean the difference between life and death. Because we know that trans and gender expansive youths, like LGBTQ youth in general, are more likely to suffer from depression and anxiety, and are more likely to consider or attempt suicide than their cisgender peers. And we know that access to gender-affirming care works. Studies found decreased rates of suicide attempts, with rates reduced from 30% pre-treatment to 8% post-treatment, as well as lower anxiety and depression. The American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American Psychiatric Association all advocate for access to gender-affirming care, including surgical intervention when appropriate. They also warn that restricting access to gender-affirming care or enacting discriminatory policies has serious negative impacts on the physical and mental health of transgender people. So the recently enacted anti-LGBTQ laws are doing harm to the very people they say they're trying to protect. If you are a transgender or non-binary person, or you are the parent of a trans person, you have firsthand knowledge of what's at stake. You know how agonizing it is to be born into a body or a gender that doesn't fit. You know how scary it is to regularly be a target of bullying and violence. You know how isolating it can be to feel that those around you simply can't or won't understand who you are. But for those of us without that firsthand knowledge, it is too easy to treat these bills as mere political issues or abstract ideas that we don't have to engage in if we don't want to. Some of us might not understand gender identity, or we might be uncomfortable with the notion that gender isn't binary. We might not know anyone who is transgender, or at least we don't know that we know someone who is transgender. And so we consider them and their experiences to be separate and distant and foreign to us. But Jewish tradition reminds us again and again that we have the obligation to find empathy, especially empathy for those who are different from us. You shall not oppress the stranger, for you know the soul of the stranger, since you were strangers in the land of Egypt. It is our memory of having been marginalized that gives us the motivation to empathize with other marginalized people, to try to understand their experiences, and even if we don't understand, to care for their well-being. During this month of LGBTQ Pride, during this attack on LGBTQ rights, let's recommit to being a community of concern and solidarity. Those of us who aren't LGBTQ can all learn to be better allies. If you're not sure where to start, talk to me or one of the other clergy, and we'll point you to some excellent resources. And if you happen to be a parent or a grandparent of a trans or gender expansive child, you can join Beth Am's discussion group. We're actually meeting on Sunday evening. The Talmud asks this question: when a person suffers, how does the divine presence express itself? The answer? God says, "Woe is me from my head. Woe is me from my arm." We imagine God as having such radical empathy that God's head and arm, which, by the way, don't even exist, hurt right along with ours. We might not be capable of that level of empathy, but we can certainly aspire to it. So to the LGBTQ members of our community, we say, we don't not care. We care very much. We care about who you are and what you must have been going through. And hey, from now on, you don't have to go through it all by yourself. Shabbat Shalom and happy Pride.